Hello again, I am Blunty. This is Dauntless. Dauntless is a free-to-play online co-op action RPG that's been in development for a few years now. Last year they had some closed beta tests going on, and as of a few days ago now, it's in open beta for everybody to try. And it will stay in open beta for an indeterminate amount of time as the developer Phoenix Labs continues to fine-tune it and add content with the help and feedback of the already surprisingly large player base. In fact, there were so many people eager to play this game on the first few days of the open beta, it was something of a mild catastrophe when it comes to the servers. They kind of imploded, repeatedly, for a couple of days. Massively long, tens of thousands long stacked queues to get logged on, sometimes hours and hours and hours of waiting just to boot the game. And even once you were in the game, there were issues with matchmaking and long wait to get back to the hub world and such. The devs have been working near night and day to get the issues sorted, and massive props to them. Their communication to the community via Reddit and Twitter and such has been exemplary. Absolute gold standard about how this stuff should be handled when you launch a game and you have server issues and stuff like that. They've been amazing at it. Huge props. But as of this morning at least, when I recorded this gameplay you're looking at now, things seem to have been locked down a bit more reliably. I had very little trouble in the game. I had a very short 1 minute long queue time to get in there in the first place, and everything worked like I think they intended it to work. As you've obviously seen by now, it's heavily inspired by Monster Hunter. In fact, among the devs, there are ex-Capcom employees who did work on Monster Hunter. You battle great big beasties called behemoths, not monsters, behemoths. I think there's about 15 in total so far, of which there are some sub-variant types within each one, some ordinary, some harder, some with elemental abilities like fire and ice and lightning, and you go at them in teams of 4 players. There's several different weapon classes and armor sets, each of which have several variants within them to craft from monster bits, and each of those can be kitted out very differently with cells, which are various types of buffs for agility, health, elemental resistance, damage enhancement, or for making them better at cutting or wounding or stunning. You get the idea. You've played games like this before with, weapon systems you can enhance with power gems and whatnot. In this case, they're just called cells. Unlike Monster Hunter, I found it very accessible to get into and understand, and there's already a good amount of variety and choices when it comes to making your character suit your personal playstyle and preferences. There's no character class system, that's all handled from what kind of armor and weapons you pair up, so you can be whatever you like, whenever you like basically. You're not locked into a particular class, you don't have to re-roll a new character if you want to play as a different class. You just unequip the sword, equip the hammer. Sometimes you'll need to be heavy and tanky, sometimes it's better to be nimble and DPS-y. Sometimes you'll need certain types of elemental attacks and resistances to make specific behemoths easier to take down, or just to survive their attacks. Thankfully, although it is free to play, the developers are well aware that any kind of pay-to-win crap will not only turn some players away, including yours truly, but get them a bunch of toxic word-of-mouth kind of stuff swirling around the player base, which will stop even more people from even trying it in the first place. A free-to-play game only survives if the player base is big, happy, and healthy. So Phoenix Labs have very smartly made all microtransaction-y kind of stuff purely cosmetic only, with one exception. You can skip some of the material gathering grind if you want to by buying packs of buffing potions. These exact same potions are also freely craftable in-game by using resources you find on the ground and stuff. And the grind to collect these things is not very severe, at least not yet in my experience so far, with about 10 hours in the game. The late game stuff is likely to be more grindy, it always is in games like this, that's all part of it. But the cosmetic microtransaction stuff is nice and varied. No big surprises here, it's all the usual stuff. Skins and transmogs for your weapons, lanterns and armor, dye packs, which are yours forever and not consumable by the way, Destiny 2, and various palettes are available. There's special picture effects for your signal flare that you use to alert your team to the location of a behemoth. Mine's a turtle. There's various kinds of emotes and arrival animations, of course, different logos and standards for your banners. You get the idea. Lots of different things to help you feel a sense of extra personalization and ownership over your character if you want that. It is all cosmetic, it is all completely optional, and nothing that grants players with bigger wallets than yours any kind of advantage. With the exception of skipping some potion resource grind, but not the monster part collection grind, which is what you actually use to craft and upgrade your weapons and armor. So you still have to work for that, regardless of how big your wallet is. There is also a perk you can buy that will give you a little boost in how quickly you gather experience points, which I'm not sure I like, but at least, again, it's not pay to win. It's just pay to skip a little grind time. And for some people who say can only play on the weekends, but want to keep pace with their co-op friends who play throughout the week and level up faster than they do otherwise, it is a very handy option to have in the back pocket. All in all, it seems like a well thought out system. And speaking personally, I have already purchased a small pack of in-game currency, about $15 worth I think it was, because I've been enjoying the game so much, it's only right to throw some happy cash at the people making it. And I'm sure in the future, I'll buy another pack when they release sort of more emotes, or flare designs, or whatever else I want to do at the time. I am more than happy to throw money at a free-to-play game when it's done like this, and when the game is compelling as this. Beyond all that though, a free-to-play game also hinges on being easy to get into, compelling, and constantly rewarding. You want your player base to choose to come back day after day after day, not because there's a daily event and they feel like they have to log in so they don't miss out, blah blah blah. I mean, this game does have the daily and weekly events and stuff, but everything else is compelling in its own right. The basic gameplay loop isn't that varied, if we're honest with ourselves. You go into various quests and hunts, and sometimes for specific prey, sometimes for a resource, but the loop is always very much the same. You form a party, you go off and land on a floating island which serves as the arena, you and your team hunt down the behemoth, you collect a few plants and mushrooms and the like on the way if you like, and once the behemoth is found, you pop a flare to let your team know where it is, or conversely, you follow your teammates' flare to where they found it, of course. And the fight unfolds. Mechanically, it's less like a traditional Monster Hunter fight and a bit more like an old-school action game boss fight. And it's really quite enjoyable. There's a good sense of agency in the fight, and the sound design in particular is really pleasing, making the fight feel visceral and intense. At some point during the fight, sometimes twice, the behemoth will run away, and you'll have to hunt it down again to finish it off. There's a few types of damage you can do, depending on your weapon and its various buffs. You get stuns and cuts and wounds, and all have slightly different effects on the behemoth. You can concentrate attacks on a specific body part with wound damage, and then use cut damage to chop off materials you then use to craft your armor and weapons. Now, I have been playing with a controller, which works great, by the way, except for some of the user interface stuff, which is very, very clumsy with a controller still. The game was built with keyboard and mouse as primary interface. But what you use is entirely up to you. Both options work very well for the actual gameplay. My advice though, if you are a controller user, in the UI, when you're crafting stuff and, fiddling with your inventory, grab the mouse. You'll find it far easier. Also, if you're running in 4K, some of the interface positioning is still a bit wonky, just FYI. Open beta, of course, and it still hasn't been super well optimized yet either. It'll run on some fairly low-level system requirements, but even though I have got a Threadripper rig with an overclocked GTX 1080, at 4K epic settings I still can't quite get to the 60 frames per second cap, which is kind of funny, but still slightly annoying. That will get better as the devs keep working though. And yes, by the way, you did hear me correctly, there is a 60 frames per second cap apparently. I don't know whether they've got physics and stuff tied to that, but in a game like this, 60 frames per second cap is fine. It's not a racing game, it's not a first-person shooter. You're not going to get that much of an advantage. You're running at 144 frames or something like that. I'm sure some elitist PC people will be slightly pissy about that, but it's actually fine. Trust me. I've been searching for years, trying to find an online MMORPG style game, preferably heavy on the PvE, because I've little to no interest in PvP, of which there is none, by the way, in this game, at least so far. For a while, I had my hopes set on Destiny, then Destiny 2, but they both disappointed. Mechanically, very, very nice, great feeling shooters, but the gameplay loop and grind just didn't stick me. Other various options slipped past me too over the years, either for genre or mechanical reasons, or maybe they were pay to win or whatever. But here, in this action RPG style setting, with easy to pick up but satisfying to try and master combat system, with the boss battle style focus and reasonably deep but not impenetrably complicated and confusing weapon and armor systems, which is what turned me off Monster Hunter World, if you're curious by the way, I think I may have finally found my ongoing online game. The quest lines are simplistic, but good enough to keep you engaged with them and have the game deliver a little bit of its lore along the way. NPC character design is quite nice, as is the limited amount of voice acting. The combat is fairly arcadey, but personally I really like that. I grew up playing arcade beat-em-ups, and again, as a free-to-play game it needs to be very, very accessible, but also ongoingly compelling. So there's still some depth in combos and lantern abilities and combining those two things with your armor abilities and things like that. And of course, the very different ways the various weapon classes each play. The hammer gameplay is very, very, very different from the sword gameplay, as is the chain blades. Haven't tried the warpike yet. The axe is kind of technical and complicated, but seems to be kind of fun. All in all, it's early days yet, of course, and we're barely into open beta, and the novelty is still shiny and new for me, so it'll be a wait-and-see thing to find out if the inevitably longer grind and late-game stuff are just as satisfying to potter away on as the game has been so far. But for now, I'm 2 days and 10 hours deep, and I'm still feeling a strong urge to keep coming back to it. And once you're in, it is absolutely one of those, just one more round, just one more hunt, just one more upgrade, just one more quest kind of games. Very difficult to put down so far. And if I do stick with it long term, there's a system in place for friends parties, of course, and even guilds, although the guild system isn't very fleshed out just now. It'll be exciting to see what else they do with that, though. But now that the servers seem to be starting to settle down, I feel okay in saying I'd recommend you give it a go if you're even moderately interested in the game. It's free to play, you've got nothing to lose but your own time by giving it a go, and I am very much looking forward to seeing how this game builds upon itself and expands over time. Oh, and also worth knowing, the devs have gone on record and said there are no more server wipes. So from the open beta, from this day forward to full release, everything you craft, earn, level up, and all the progression you make will stay. So you can feel safe in properly investing your time, effort, and emotion into your character without fear that they'll be magically nuked when we hit the 1.0 full release. Been through that a couple of times with various games. Very disappointing. So finally, if you're curious to see more, I've already put my first few hours of the game, which I live streamed, up on my secondary YouTube channel, youtube.com/bluntnate. I will also be continuing to stream it over on twitch.tv/bluntnate. But yeah, Dauntless. I think I might like it. Thanks for watching. I am Blunty, and I will catch you next time.